What is up, y'all? Welcome back to my channel. This is the first time that we are going live ever. So I'm so excited today to be doing a live Snapseed tutorial for y'all. Shout out to everyone giving love in the chat. I don't know where y'all are from, but good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Yeah, so if you guys don't know me, my name is Tina, and I do a lot of editing tutorials on YouTube, mainly Snapseed. And if you want to follow along and edit along with me, the description to download the picture is in the description box. So make sure you download that and we can all edit together. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started. All right, so I'm going to open up the picture of my favorite camel that I took in Australia in Snapseed. So hopefully you guys all have it open on your phone as well. So again, I did a poll on my YouTube to see what type of edit y'all wanted. Vintage edit 1, so that's the type of edit that we are going to do today. Okay, so our very first step is tune image. If you guys follow my other tutorials, I always start with tune image. So the very first thing we're going to do is increase the brightness. So this picture is already bright enough to begin with, so I'm only going to edit it or up the brightness by a little bit, and then up the contrast. So because we're going for a vintage edit today, I don't want to increase ambiance too much because then it can get a little bit cartoony. So we're only going to increase it, again, buzzword of this video, a little bit. And then up the highlights and a little bit of the shadows. And that's all I'm going to do. So that's done there. Our very next step, if y'all guessed it, is details. So again, because vintage shots are a little bit more blurred out and the details aren't necessarily there, we're not going to increase sharpen and structure too much. We're only going to do it a teensy bit. So it doesn't really change much, but adds a little bit more detail in the shot. All right, so the third step is HDR escape. Now this is optional and I'm going to tell you why. If we increase it or increase the filter by 100, you'll notice that the picture gets very cartoony, and that's not what we want because we're going for a vintage edit today. So I'm only going to increase the filter strength a teensy bit. Okay, so again, that's optional. As you can tell, it doesn't really do much of the shot, but I do it in all of my photos, so that's what we're going with. Okay, so the very next step is crucial to the vintage edit. It's called Grainy film. It is one of my favorite features in Snapseed. I use it in all of my pictures when I edit my photos. So we're gonna go click into Grainy film. As you scroll through the different filters, you'll notice that there's a lot. So my favorite ones are X03 and X04. If you watched my vintage edit tutorial, you'll know why, but it just makes the picture look a lot better. I don't know, it just looks more vintage to me. So I'm going to start with X03. You'll see that it makes the sky more aqua than it was before. We're only going to add about 20% of grain. You don't want to add too much because your picture, the quality of it is going to go down, as you can tell by the way it looks right now. So we're only going to increase it by about 20. Again, it's up to your preference. It depends on how much grain you want in your photo. And then in terms of the style strength, I'm not going to add it 100%, but I'm only going to add it about 35. But this is all up to preference, so if you want to add more, feel free. Okay, so now we're going to go back into Grainy foam. By the way, the name of the camel, I don't really know. I forgot to ask when I was there, but let's just call him Steve. So we're going to go back into Grainy foam and we're going to add the X04 filter. So this makes the picture more warm, as you can tell. So we're not going to add any grain whatsoever because we already added it with the X03 filter. And so I'm only going to add a little bit here. So if I added it all the way to 100%, the picture is very brown and very warm. So if you're going for a more brown, moody edit, then you can increase this by a lot more, but that's not what we're doing today. All right, that looks good to me. Okay, so if we do a before and after of what it looks like right now, so this was before and this was after, you'll see there's already a subtle difference. The picture's already more warm and it already looks a little bit more retro. So now we're gonna go into curves. Everyone's bane of existence, everyone's scared to try curves, but honestly, I don't know why, because it changes your picture completely, and a little goes a long way. You only need to make subtle changes within curves for your picture to change. So our very first curve that we're going to play with is the luminous curve. So all this does is it adjusts the overall brightness of your photo. And if you hover over the line, so if you just put your finger kind of over it, you'll notice that a grid comes up. So you can use this grid to see kind of where you want to mark your spots. So I like to mark 3 spots on this curve: highlights, midtones, and shadows. So highlights are at the top of the curve, and what they do is you'll notice that it increases, it makes the picture really bright, and then if you move it down, it makes the picture completely black. So again, subtle changes make a huge of a difference. So we're gonna up this a little bit here. We're gonna up the midtones as well, and we're gonna up the shadows because the shadows in the picture are looking a bit dark. Okay, that looks good to me. Actually lower this a little bit. So as you can see in doing that, the picture is a little bit more red now. The camel looks like it has a really bad sunburn, or Steve, so I say. Anjali asks, what if I have fat fingers? Well, there's no help for you, but your fingers really shouldn't matter as long as you mark it in the right line. You don't really need to necessarily follow the grid per se. You can pretty much mark it wherever. Like as you can see, my points aren't really directly on the grid. It's more of just a guideline. Okay, so the next thing we're gonna do is go into our red curve because I don't want Steve looking like he was sunbathing for hours, even though I feel like that's what camels do. Okay, so we're gonna take our highlights and we're going to lower this, since as you can see, it makes the picture more blue, and then if you raise it at the very top, it makes it a lot more red, and we don't really want that. So we're gonna decrease highlights, we're going to decrease midtones, and we're going to decrease the shadows a bit. Okay, again, I'm only moving these points a teensy little bit, and you can see that even little movements go a long way. Okay, so now we're gonna go into our green curve. If you want a more green tinge to your shot, then this is where you wanna increase. Steve, Anjali says Steve has a nice hand, my Yeah, honestly, you can make them look as red or as tanned as you want. It's really up to you, which is why I love Snapseed. It gives you more control into making edits of your own. You don't necessarily need to follow exactly what I'm doing, but I'm more just teaching you how I would edit it. Okay, so Steve here. I don't want the picture looking too green or too pink or magenta if you move this down. So I am going to adjust this down a little bit because I do want a more of a pink hinge to it, and adjusting the midtones as well. I'm going to increase the midtones, and I'm going to decrease the shadows. So with curves, it's a lot of trial and error. There's no perfect formula for curves, unfortunately. It's more of just playing around with the different marks with the highlights and midtones and the shadows on your curve line, and just seeing what fits your photo best. Okay, our second last curve is the blue curve. So again, this adjusts the overall blue of the picture. So in terms of highlights, I'm going to, oh, this is telling me there's going to be an ad on my phone in 10 seconds. So let's just go with that. We're going to increase the, oh, there you go, there's the ad. Okay, let's ignore that. And let's go back, there you go. Okay, so for the midtones, I'm going to decrease it because I want the camel looking a little bit warmer. And then I'm going to also decrease the shadows. Okay, now we're done with our color curves. Now we're gonna go into our RGB curve. This adjusts the overall contrast of the photos. So we're gonna take our highlights, we're going to up the highlights, and it adds a little bit more light into the shot. In terms of midtones, I'm going to decrease it, and then in terms of shadows, I'm going to increase it. Okay, so now that we're done with curves, always follow your steps. Miriam says, always follow your steps until curves. I did speed through curves, but if you guys are interested, I can do a more detailed curves video. I did do one already, but a lot of people have been requesting for an updated one, so I can definitely go into a bit more detail into some of the steps and curves. But again, I find that playing around with curves, the more you play around with it, the more you'll get to know it. And again, there's no exact science, but it just takes a little bit of getting used to. Okay, so let's do before and after to see where we're at. So this is before and this is after. So the picture is more bright. The camel Steve looks a lot happier. But our next step is white balance. So if at the end of curves, your picture looks too green or it looks too blue, you can actually adjust this with white balance. So with any vintage shot, I find that the warmer it looks, I prefer it that way. So you can actually increase the temperature here. We're not going to increase it 100%. We're going to increase it, let's say about 15 looks good. And then tint as well. If Steve was looking too green or too pink, you could adjust it here. We're not going for a disco effect, so we're going to increase the tint only a teensy bit, so about 4. For next live, could you please edit portrait mode photos? Yes, actually, if you have a portrait mode photo that you want me to edit, simply send it to me via my email, and I'm happy to do that. But yeah, great idea for our next tutorial, thank you. Okay, so we're gonna end white balance there. So brush is the usual next step that I would take when I edit photos. This is completely optional, but it gives you more control into editing specific parts of your photo. So we're gonna open brush, dodge and burn simply adjusts the brightness. We can make certain parts of your picture darker or brighter. Exposure does the same, but you have more control. And temperature and saturation adjusts the color of the photo. So in this case, I'm going to use dodge and burn, and I'm only going to use 5% of it instead of 10. And I noticed that his eye area is a little bit dark, and I want Steve's eyes to really glow. So I'm actually going to brush over this area a teensy bit to brighten it up a bit. And that is all I'm going to do with brush. Okay, our very last step, and again, one of my all-time favorite features in Snapseed is double exposure. Double exposure allows you to do a variety of different things. You could add people to this photo, you could remove certain parts. In this case, we're going to use it to add a dust overlay. Shruti, can I just send you all my photos to edit? Yeah, if you pay me, I'd be happy to. Okay, so now we're gonna go into double exposure. So for those that don't have any dust overlay, if you go into Google right now, so I'm gonna do it with y'all. So we're gonna open Google. We're gonna type in dust PNG. That's it. And then go to images. You can literally choose any dust overlay that you want to add. In this case, I like this one. So all you have to do is download it, and that's the overlay that we're going to use for our double exposure. So we're going to go back into Snapseed. Okay, so now that we're in double exposure, you're going to click the little left plus sign to add your overlay. As you can see, I downloaded it before, and you're going to click. So now that the dust overlay is on top of Steve, we now can adjust the type of overlay that we want. So if you click the middle icon, you can adjust the blending option. So if we go through it, some of them are a little bit extreme and some of them are a bit more subtle. I prefer lighten because it adds a bit of a more subtle effect, but if you want something more dramatic, then you can play with the other blending options. Okay, so I'm going to adjust the percentage of lighten. If we go too much, then Steve disappears, and we don't want that. So I'm going to only add a little bit here. that looks good. Okay, so the other thing you can do, sometimes I like to do it, if you notice that the dust is appearing in areas where you don't want, what you can do is click the undo icon at the very top, click view edits, and click on double exposure and click the middle edit icon. Click on the left yin yang symbol, and now our double exposure is at 0, which means that we can erase any dust particle that we don't want. So let's say I didn't want this dust thing in this area right here. I'm actually just gonna color over it and it's going to make it disappear. Yeah, okay, so let's keep it at that. Now we're gonna go back into our photo. Okay, that is it. I know that seemed like a lot of steps, but if we do a final before and after, this was what it was before. It was dark and boring and didn't really have any life to the photo, and this is after. So now you have a more vibrant, vintage looking edit. Okay, can you do live tutorials every weekend? Thanks. Yeah, if you guys want more, I'm happy to do more. Let me know in the comments or the chat what type of live tutorial you want. This was a very specific vintage edit, but if you're looking for another type of edit, then I'm happy to do so. This is why I love Snapseed so much, because you have so much control over what type of edit you want. You can do a movie edit, you can do a vintage edit, you could do, like I have my regular Simplyteee edit, I don't even know what to call it. But hope you guys enjoyed that. If you have any other questions, put them in the chat. Actually, there's another question. Can you show us how to add something from a specific picture of yours, like a tree maybe with a double exposure effect instead of the downloaded picture? Yeah, okay, so let's say I wanted to be next to the camel. Let's add myself into this shot. We're gonna go back into double exposure. Actually, I don't want y'all to see my camera roll. Okay, let's use this picture just for sakes. Can you play Animal Crossing with your followers? I don't play Animal Crossing, so that's gonna be a no. But thank you. I've heard people that do play Animal Crossing are very addicted, and I don't really understand why. That's probably because I haven't even played it. Need help with photos that are too dark. Yes, we'll get on that right after. Okay, so let's just, for these purposes, I want to add this photo of me with the camel. So now that it's there, you can adjust the opacity to help you kind of add it into the shot the right way. So after you've placed it where you want to place it, adjust the percentage so that it's at 100%. Again, it's not going to look like this. Don't be freaked out. So now we're going to go back into undo. We're going to click view edits the same way we did before. We're going to click the latest double exposure edit that we added, and we're going to click the edit. So click the yin yang symbol, which is going to show the picture that we added, and we're going to lower the double exposure percentage to 0. Now we are going to erase any part of the overlay that we do not want. So you can zoom in to help you follow the lines. It's like magic. So for these purposes, I'm not actually going to do a perfect double exposure because that would take a while. This is just to show you how I would normally do it. Okay, there we go. Now I am chilling with Steve, taking a selfie in the middle of the desert. Again, the raised lines aren't perfect, but I just wanted to show you how you could do that if you wanted to do it. Yes, that is magic. Okay, so for dark photos, what I like to do is used to an image, so you can adjust the brightness. Ambiance is great too for adjusting dark photos, and HDRscape. Those are the three kind of tools that I would use to brighten up a dark picture. If you are taking it inside and the quality of it isn't as good as if you were to take it outside or with night mode on a pixel, for example, if the more you brighten it, you'll notice that there's more grain that's visible in the shot. So just be careful of that when you're editing. Can you add us into that photo? I don't have a picture of all three of us on hand, but if I did, this is how I would do it. Okay. Yeah, so if you want more live tutorials, let me know in the comments. If you have any other questions, let me know in the comments as well. This was fun. What phone and camera do you use to take these photos? So this photo was taken, the camera photo was taken specifically with my Google Pixel 3 XL. And so was the picture of me that I just added. But I tend to use my phone, or I use my Sony DSLR camera. Sloth or Steve? Ooh, that's a hard one. For those of you that haven't met my sloth tattoo, this is, oh my god, where did I go? His name is also Steve. But I'm gonna have to go with Sloth because I don't really know that camel. You're welcome, Miriam, and if I pronounced your name wrong, I'm sorry, but shout out to everyone that tuned in. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This wasn't as scary as I thought it was gonna be. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that, and I will see you guys next time. And in the meantime, stay safe, stay sane, and enjoy yourself in quarantine. Hopefully we get out of this soon. Okay, bye.
Okay, bye. Okay, bye.